Kia ora koutou. Welcome to our first Creative Spaces Leaders interview. I'm Jenny Hutchings, Creative Spaces Advisor with Arts Access Aotearoa, and I'm joined today by our Director, Richard Benge. We've invited 4 Creative Spaces leaders to have a conversation about the effect COVID-19 is having on their organisations in order to share some insights into some of the challenges facing our creative spaces and the vulnerable people in their communities. These 4 organisations are only a small representation of the rich diversity of creative spaces sector in New Zealand. They vary in organisational structure, staffing levels and funding bases, and their communities are diverse, supporting children or adults living with intellectual disability, mental health, physical disability or fragile health concerns. I'd like now to introduce you to our guests. Jen Ryckaert, Director of Raukatauri Music Therapy Centre in Auckland. Lyn Cotton, founder of Jolt, an integrated dance organisation in Christchurch. Chapman, Co-ordinator of King Street Artworks, an art studio open to the community in Masterton, Wairarapa. And Hendry, Centre Manager for the Arts for Health organisation in Hamilton. Website and Facebook links for these organisations are in our Creative Spaces directory, and I encourage you to take a look at this. Now I hand you over to Richard Benge to start the conversation. Thanks, Richard.
Kia ora tātou. Welcome to this Zoom conversation during COVID-19. We hope that it'll bring information and some connection to you and your colleagues. We know around Aotearoa this has been an extraordinarily difficult time where you've been trying to continue your service and maintain your sense of community with the people that you serve. I believe that our community is quite heroic and wonderful. You are already a battling community that isn't well funded, and now we've had this extra challenge. So we thought it would be great for you to overhear this conversation and see how you can find the similarities yourselves. First of all, I'll speak to Lyn Chapman from King Street Artworks in Masterton, and I'll be really interested. Welcome, Lyn. How has it been for King Street Artworks in this time, and what have the key challenges been that you've noticed straight away?
Well, we had to get up and running pretty quickly, and it's mainly about getting people involved and keeping the involvement ongoing. So we've done that through our social media page, and we got that up and running really quickly. So we've basically created 2 chat rooms that are one's a general quarantine, we call it the King Street Quarantine chat room, where anybody can get involved and they can just talk about what's happening in their days and the problems that they have, and we and the staff are involved with that all the time as well. And then we have an art focus chat room as well, so we can post workshops, videos, and show what we've been doing, or the artists can show what they've been doing as well. So that's been working really well. And as staff, we've had to work really quickly to get in touch with those people that aren't on social media, and there's quite a few of those. So we have a regular roster where we phone these people once or twice a week, make sure that they're okay, that they are connecting with somebody, that they're not isolated, and that they've got everything they need. One thing that we found is on the last day, before we went into lockdown, we thought we'd have a week. We were planning to get art packs together for artists, and we just couldn't get the order in time. So that was one of our failings, unfortunately. So people had to think laterally about what they're using at home to be creative. And we are trying to keep people creating, because we know that's a way to kind of take your mind off what's happening around the world. And it's actually really good for you just to go out there and create. And you can use, as I said in many videos, you use whatever's around the house. You don't have to use expensive materials. So we've had to think very fast. We had to change our work habits really quickly, but it's worked incredibly well. We have, on average, around 50 people attend the quarantine chat room every day, and probably about 37 attending the art chat room every day.
That's great, Ian. What platforms have you been using?
Facebook. That's the sole platform, yeah.
And were your members all able to access the platform? Did they have enough data on their phones? Do they even have phones?
That's the problem, yeah. Some didn't have, or they had phones, but they didn't have data, or they didn't have the knowledge about how to access it. So we walked through a few people. They learned really quickly, as we all have, about these new technologies. So they have learned quickly, but data is a problem. A lot of people have got plans, and that's all good, but we've come across a few people. One person in particular used $100 worth of data in an evening, and they can't afford that. There's no way. So we're trying to work with her and how we can get things sorted for her so that she can access the Facebook page and not spend any more money. So that's.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah. I'm going to move from Ian now, and we're going to move from the Wairarapa down to the South Island and talk to Lyn Cotton, who's the director of Jolt Integrated Dance Company. The whole thing there, of course, in contrast to King Street Artworks, is Lyn, you're a dance studio. So what have been the challenges for your group?
I think the biggest challenge, the biggest question we had to ask ourselves was what does connection mean? So for us within dance, obviously touch, at close proximity is really, really important. So we knew that music was going to be our connection. So we knew that music is a language to us, and that was the way that we were still going to be able to connect. So the first thing we did was we got my Jolt at Home playlist, we called it, with all our songs, and a lot of those the guys know really, really well, so they can do them independently at home. We emailed that out to all our family, we posted it on Facebook, and we shared it as widely as we could. And I know that I've talked to parents and their children, and I've talked to carers, and their people are doing that at home. And then we decided that every day during lockdown we were going to post a dance video. And the beautiful thing about those videos is that we've got a reasonably big staff of part-timers, got about 14 teachers and assistants. So they let us into their homes. So, because often the parents only knew their tutor, or they would have seen some of the other ones, but they didn't really know them. So Nyla was on yesterday with her dad, Tony, who's in his 70s, and together they did a warm-up dance for everybody to join in with. We've also had our tutor trainees with disabilities who are leading some of those as well. So it was the music and the connection through social media and through sharing those playlists that has been the key way that we've stayed connected.
Beautiful image to see people in their homes and getting music that way. Challenges, are you facing any financial challenge at the moment? What's that platform?
What we did in terms of this term coming up is that we've gone to online classes. So we applied for the wage subsidy for our part-timers, and then we've been able to say to people that there's no fees for this term. So that's going to tie us through for this term. We're reasonably lucky in that we have small infrastructure, so we don't run an office and things like that. So we can be sustainable for quite a while. And we also, I suppose for me, we've been thinking a lot about our funding platform. So going forwards, it's always been about community. So I think to stay financially sustainable in the long term, that's where our focus is really going to be, looking to build a big community where people can give what they can. For some people, that's still okay, but for a lot of people, it may only be $1 or $2. So that whole pay what you can, having a lot of people giving smaller amounts to keep us sustainable will be the way that we'll look to going forwards, which is a beautiful way to build community anyway, because I suppose we really recognise the power of goodwill, so that people can give in lots of different ways as well. So within this experience, just continuing to have that wider community reach and acknowledge every sort of way of giving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, kia ora, Lyn. It seems to be on the plus side of the whole COVID-19 environment. There seems to be a greater sense of people wanting to see how they can help. And now is the time, if you're going to be doing a fundraising campaign or letting people know that you have fundraising platforms, that now would be the time to do it. You were talking earlier about, sorry.
So I was just going to, one thing I do need to say is that my really, really big fear and worry is for that as we come out of this, you know, this situation, as we get more freedom, that a lot of our community won't. A lot of our community will continue to be isolated, and that social media can only go so far because a lot of our guys don't have access to devices, or their internet is poor and all the rest of it. So the really big thing that we're going to move on to do is how can we connect outside of the social media way. So we're thinking about doing a jolt on the footpath, whereby we can go to the footpath of the house where the person is, where they're still isolated, and do a little jolt from a distance and things like that. But that whole thing of isolation and the disparity in our community between people who have support and who don't have support is something that concerns me and worries me, and I've still got to keep working on that.
Thank you, Lyn. I was thinking about the connection between your creative space and Raukatauri being the connection through music, and how music is a great connector. So I'm going to ask Jen from Raukatauri, what's been the challenges for your group, Jen? And in particular, how have you been dealing with the concerns of parents as well as your actual clients?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is a challenge specific to Raukatauri is that we are a clinical practice. So while we needed to balance getting our services online really quickly, we also needed to think about how to do that within a very private and confidential way for our families. So we, like Ian, set ourselves a goal to get online really quickly. We had all of our services available to families online from the 1st of April. And that's really across 3 different platforms that we're using. So the first one is we opened a private Facebook group for our families called Raukatauri Quarantunes. So on Quarantunes, our therapists put up 5 to 6 videos every day, Monday through Saturday. A huge amount of content is generated every day. And these are, we have a Morena session every morning. We have bedtime songs and stories every night. We have movement every day at 9:30 to help our kids get some exercise. And then we have different types of content during the day, instrument making, sing-alongs. We've just started something new called Happy Hour, which is where we do music that is friendly to the whole family. So parents, kids, everyone at like 5, 6 o'clock at night have something fun on while you're making dinner, eating dinner, pub classics, things like that. But we intentionally decided that that would be a private Facebook group just for our families, because we almost wanted to have the same sense that we have in our waiting rooms at Raukatauri, where families can talk about challenges that they're facing, strategies for dealing with different sensory or behavioral challenges that they're struggling with. So we've intentionally kept that private to our families, and the families have responded to that by posting pictures of their kids enjoying the sessions, connecting with other families, sharing feedback. We've used it to poll parents in how we can support them. So use that then to generate content specifically to support parents, and to arrange we're starting tomorrow night, caregiver Zoom sessions in the evening that are facilitated by our therapists as a little bit of a higher level support group for our families beyond just the conversations that you would have in the waiting room. And then we've also been using Zoom to offer individual and group music therapy sessions for our clients. If you turn the camera around, you would actually see that the other side of this room is my music therapy room, where I've been seeing my clients since we started lockdown. So we do use Zoom with all of its privacy things in place for our individual and group sessions with our clients. And then for those clients who are accessing our services at via schools or residential locations doing our forensic mental health work. We're providing those facilities with private YouTube channel links so that they can use a pre-recorded session put together by their therapist with the group at the facility, or they can share it on to the families at the schools so that they have a private link that they can use. So we felt like through that we've been able to keep the accessibility of the service up while also protecting the confidentiality and the privacy of the clients and the families who we're working with.
Thank you, Jen. It's amazing just the number of channels and content that you've been able to put up in such a short time. It's really great that it sounds like your community have tablets or have access to data.
Well, actually, sorry, Richard, to interrupt, but where we found a huge disparity there is we opened our regional center in Northland in 2019, and if you look at the ability of the whānau who we interact with in Northland to be able to access our services versus those in Auckland and Hawke's Bay, there's actually a huge disparity in terms of online access for those families. I have encouraged all the therapists to go back and reconnect with families who initially couldn't connect with us, in the hopes that once the Ministry of Education started to provide more laptops and Wi-Fi to those families, that we might have better connection in Northland, but that has been an area of real challenge for us.
So the areas of challenge are we're starting to see themes around the country, and for organisations that do not have funding from district health boards and such, there's another set of challenges. I'm going to talk to Kaz Hendry about how the challenges of working with a wide group of clients at this time. Kaz, what's it been like, and what are the challenges for you right now?
It's been a little crazy. I was on leave until the day before we locked down properly. So there were issues around communication for our staff, and I guess some of it, so we really didn't kick off on the right step. It's taken us a wee while to get ourselves going. My biggest concerns really have been about the health and well-being of our staff and our artists. Not everybody has access to or has the ability to access online services, and especially for the staff, they have most of us have underlying issues. So the key goal was to ensure people's safety and well-being above everything else. Now that we've kind of caught up with everybody else in terms of providing service long-term online, we're starting to look at options for Facebook and probably Open Studio using Zoom. There's some challenges for us in terms of staff and myself not really having a good grip on how Zoom works and how effective it's going to be. But we're going to give it a try anyway and just see how we go. I think that's our main challenge at the moment, is people's health, to make sure that they're okay, and about access.
Kaz, what do you think, if you could look forward a month or 2 months, 6 months, what will your community look like? What will be the main issue they're going to be facing?
I think a lot of our community is still going to be isolated. We, as an organisation, we won't be returning to our base until all the alert levels are finished. The risk is just too big for us in terms of people's safety, and our space is fairly small, so that we can't maintain a 2 metre assistance from other people anyway. Going forward, I think we'll start to see people come back over the next 6 months. I'm hoping that they'll all be well and ready to come back. I think that in the longer term, in the next 6 to 8, 12, 18 months, we are going to struggle with successful funding applications. There's been some really awesome stuff going on with a lot of the funders that we work with and stakeholders who are accessing additional funds from their reserves or their capital, and they're spending that now to make sure that people have food and housing and all the basics of life. But I wonder how that will affect us when we start applying later on, you know, how much money will be available at a later date. So my worry is, will we still be functioning in a year's time?
Thank you, Kaz. I wonder how it is in the Wairarapa, Ian, when you look forward into the future. What are concerns, what do you see the community will be facing?
Well, access will be the key. We can go back at level 2, and we had a plan just in place prior to going to level 3 of limited access. So we'd have 15 people per day, and we could spread them through the workshop. We have been talking about how we could expand that so that we may extend our hours so that we can get more people in through the day, but they come in for a set period. So that's what we really need to have is that access and keep that isolation as minimal as possible. People are dead keen to come back. What's going to be a problem is stopping them, you know, at the door on the first Monday. I think, you know, we're going to have a whole horde of people through. But we're going to have to be really, well, we have to be policemen about it, I'm afraid. Money-wise, I also agree about the future funding from, say, lotteries and COGS and whatnot. I think there's going to have a reduced pool for funding and more people fighting for it. So that's going to be a concern. The DHB is pretty good at the moment, the Wairarapa DHB. They've committed to renewing our contracts as is for the next year. So that's a bit of a relief, and we have reserves in place. But it's just about how we're going to work in future with artists and getting our new routines into place, because it's not going to be the same. We all agree on that.
Thank you, Ian. Down in Christchurch, with Jolt, Lyn, you mentioned there were ideas about how to take the art to people who are isolated. But what do you think the future will look like, say, for your community?
Well, we start our online Zoom classes on Monday, and we've got pretty much 90% of people being able to access and come on board those. I think we have to look at accessibility for us on lots of different levels. So for the people who can do Zoom online and that's effective for them, that's going to be great until they can physically get back into a class. And then for those people, because we work with a lot of people with higher needs, who find the online classes harder, what we've done is we've created one-on-ones with them. But like I said, going forwards, when a lot of those people are still isolated, when others are back to classes, I want to look at some way that we can be going into the homes, whether it's community homes or into the day centres. I think we're going to have to be going to our community much more, and the safety and health issues around that I still have to learn, because obviously we don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize it. But there's, you know, there has to be a way that 6 months down the track we can see people somehow, that we can start to go beyond that screen connection, even if it's from a distance. Like I say, even if we're out on the footpath or on their deck, you know, doing the music and dancing with them, we'll make that happen somehow. So for me, it's about freeing myself up and creating a small group that can actively go to the places where people are going to be isolated long term. So long term, I see us working on different levels.
Thank you, Lyn.
regular classes online, going to people.
Thank you. So last word from you, Jen. If you're looking into the future for Raukatauri and your community, how do you see your community working with the centre and your different centres?
I think an important thing for us is that we don't lose all the learning that we've gotten from this. You know, we've worked incredibly hard to be adaptable during this time period. It's made us be really creative. Our 9 registered music therapists have just embraced it so enthusiastically, and so many of our families have really embraced it. So how do we go back to our model that we know and love of direct service to all of our clients, but how do we also take some of this new learning to be able to continue to engage with our clients when they're too unwell to come to us, because a lot of our clients are very medically fragile and don't get to have their sessions when they're too unwell to come to the center. How do we use this learning to reach into areas of the country that don't have music therapy right now? Again, when we opened in Northland last year, that was the first time music therapy had ever been available in Northland. And I was feeling very proud of us until I got a call from Kaitaia about 3 days later saying, so when are you going to have a therapist in Kaitaia? You know, so how do we use this learning that we've developed from this to be able to do a mix of direct service plus distance work so that we can reach more people in the country, because we know that there are a lot of regions where music therapy is just, you know, completely unavailable. So I just don't want to lose the value of what we've created during this time period. I want to find out how we can integrate that with our former way of working.
Thanks, Jen. I think a theme that has emerged in so many platforms around what have we learned, what are we learning, and how can we continue to research this period. There'll be reams of information about the way society, the economy, the arts, all the different sectors are learning from the challenges. And one of the great things I've heard you all say is how your staff and your members, your clients and your families have responded so willingly and so creatively and so passionately to assist you to deliver the service, but ultimately to keep the community together, to keep it strong, to keep it safe, and to keep it learning and expressing and developing and creating through the arts. So I'd like to thank you all for being part of our Zoom conversation today, and thank you to Jenny and Gary, my colleagues at Arts Access Aotearoa. We really liked having you all and your opinions, and we hope to do it again. So kia ora, thanks for coming.